Hello, thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation on success tips for beginning educators. Um, I really hope that you learned something from this video and even think about incorporating some of these ideas into your future classroom. So this video is about my field experience insights where I studied classroom management and student motivation. Go ahead. All right, so I did my field experience at Peachtree City Elementary School, and this presentation summarizes my experiences and insights gained during a STEM summer camp where I assisted my mother, an experienced teacher. It covers my observations of collaborative learning, key takeaways from interviews regarding classroom management, and the educational theories that informed my understanding of effective teaching practices. So to start out, we're just going to kind of go over a little description of the summer camp. The STEM Summer Camp was a structured 5-day program where participants engaged in 3 hours of interactive activities each day, focusing on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This hands-on approach provided students with practical experience and fostered a deeper understanding of STEM concepts. And I will say, the majority of the students at this camp were either gifted students, higher achieving, or just had a genuine interest in STEM topics. So that did make for an interesting and unique perspective for my um, observations. Assisting an experienced teacher with over 20 years in education allowed for valuable insights into effective teaching strategies, classroom management, and student engagement. The camp's collaborative environment highlighted the importance of experienced mentorship in educational settings. And then just a little bit more about what we did at the camp. Activities in the science lab encompassed various STEM-related projects, enabling students to explore concepts through experimentation and teamwork. The emphasis on collaborative problem-solving was integral to the learning experience and encouraged peer interaction. And then this is just about what I actually did at the camp. I assisted an experienced educator, observed cooperative learning, and gained insights from an interview. And these are some of my observations that I noticed at the camp. Let's see. In the STEM summer camp, students were actively engaged in collaborative problem-solving tasks that utilized the engineering process. This method encouraged teamwork, allowing students to share ideas and learn from one another's perspectives. The result was a dynamic learning environment where students were motivated to contribute and support each other in their projects. And however, I did notice that not all students responded equally to this collaborative approach. While some thrived in group settings, demonstrating increased engagement and eagerness to participate, others found it challenging. These students struggled with communication or were less confident in expressing their ideas, highlighting the varied responses to collaborative learning experiences. Okay, and these are my insights on effective classroom management. This was This is mostly what I gained from my interviews with my mom. Classroom management is essential for fostering a positive educational atmosphere. As highlighted by my interview with my mom, she stressed the significance of establishing clear expectations and procedures at the start of the school year, which helps create a stable environment conducive to learning. This proactive approach encourages student accountability and promotes a culture of collaboration and respect. And I will say she did a great job at the beginning of the first day. They all had a discussion about what rules they felt like were most important and needed to be followed. And she also mentioned if you have more than 5 rules, then the students become very overwhelmed and you will see an unwillingness to follow those rules. So she did a great job establishing those rules on day one. Establishing rules collaboratively with students encourages ownership and accountability. When students have a voice in the creation of classroom norms, they are more likely to follow them and support each other in maintaining a positive environment. And that statement right there is basically the claim of the democratic classroom management theory. It basically just states that if students have a say in their rules and what they choose to follow, then they are more likely to follow those rules and present unwanted behaviors. And again, this was another one of the topics that my mom highlighted in her interview. Clear and consistent enforcement of classroom rules creates a safe and productive learning atmosphere. This consistency helps to reduce disruptive behavior and fosters a sense of security for students, allowing them to focus on their learning. And this was another one of the topics she really highlighted in her interview as well. Classroom management is not just about rules, it also involves building relationships with students. When teachers understand their students' needs and motivations, they can tailor their management strategies to foster a supportive learning environment. Okay, so this is just a little bit about the history behind the democratic classroom management theory. As stated before, the theory explores the impact of student involvement in classroom dynamics. So, starting in the early 1700s, John Locke introduces the idea of natural rights and the importance of individual voices in governance, laying the groundwork for democratic principles and education. And then in the 18th century, Jean Jacques Rousseau promotes the concept of student agency and the importance of nurturing children's natural curiosity and advocating for their involvement in the learning process. In the 20th century, we see the democratic classroom management theory emerge. It emphasizes the role of student input in rule setting and leading to greater engagement and accountability among students. And now we have our present day, which current educational practices incorporate democratic principles fostering student engagement through collaborative rulemaking, resulting in positive classroom cultures. And you will see proof of that throughout our presentation. It's a pretty interesting topic. All right. Now our second theory is the expectancy value theory. And these are the insights that I gained from my observations. So to start off, our definition of the expectancy value theory: students who believe they can succeed and value the task are more motivated to engage with it. This was observable as students navigated challenges during experiments. I saw a lot of proof of this. Like I said before, a lot of these kids are higher achieving, so they have a higher sense of self-efficacy and they believe that they can get to a successful result in almost every task that they do. Um, and the general idea behind the theory is the higher the expectancy of success, so the more that they think they'll do well, the higher value they'll place on that task. And the higher both of those things are, um, the higher their motivation level is. So, some of the challenges that I saw during my field experience, like I said, a lot of them were gifted, high achieving students. And with that being said, they were not really used to failing as much. Um, and it presented a challenge because the teacher kind of had to change their perspective of success and what is defined as successful. So, an example of that would be one of our students was working on he was working on an experiment and he did some of his math wrong and didn't get the desired result that he wanted. So, he immediately was thrown off by the fact that he didn't get it right and thought that he failed. And he was so upset with his failure, he became frustrated and decided to quit the project. Um, the teacher noticed him pouting and not participating in the experiment, and she went over and had a discussion with him about how even though we don't get our desired result, that doesn't mean that we failed. You can learn from your mistakes and complete the project still with your desired result after you go back and figure out where you went wrong. So she had that talk with him and stressed the importance of making mistakes and learning from them. And he then went back, looked at his math, figured out where he went wrong, and was able to complete the experiment successfully. All right, some of the key insights from my field experience. Let's see. I'm sorry, give me one moment. I lost my place. Okay. Fostering high self-efficacy in students is crucial as it directly correlates with their motivation to learn. Establishing strong connections with students enhances the teaching process, enabling educators to better understand and address individual needs, ultimately enriching the overall learning experience. Um, I do agree with that, and I think the more that you motivate your students and tell them that you encourage them and believe in them, the more willing they will be to do well on assignments and the higher motivation they will have because they have more confidence in themselves and more confidence in their ability for success. Going back to that theory. Okay. Some of my success tips for future educators. My first tip, I would involve students in rule setting. As we've seen from our presentation and the examples of our field experience, when you allow students to make their own rules and have a voice and have a say, they are much more willing to follow those rules. Um, let's see. Establishing classroom rules with student input and creates a sense of ownership and accountability among students. When they participate in the rule setting process, they are more likely to adhere to the agreed upon guidelines. And again, I feel like that was proved throughout this presentation. Because we never did have really any issues, and when we did, I have an example of that for later on, but you'll see it's actually next. Um, Anyways, so one way that I would incorporate this in my future classroom, or that I would recommend doing it, I would have a class discussion on the first day, and then after that discussion, I would allow the students to either post on Padlet or vote on Google Forms which rules they think they should follow and why, um, and just kind of go from there. All right, so tip number 2, maintaining consistency and consequences. As we saw from my mom's interview, this is pretty important to what is the word? It's pretty important to having a good classroom management. Consistency in enforcing consequences is crucial for maintaining order. It helps students understand the importance of rules and the repercussions of their actions, fostering a stable learning environment. Well, it helps foster a stable learning environment. So a great example of this, one of the students in our camp, he was misusing materials for a project, and as agreed upon in the first day, he was given a verbal warning, and after he did not follow the verbal warning, he lost the privilege to use those materials. And again, that was the agreed upon consequence from the first day. So once the other students saw that the teacher was being consistent and was sticking with her consequences and actually meant them, they became much more aware of their behavior and if they were following the rules or not. And we even saw some students correcting other students and just kind of reminding them of the rules and like, hey, you don't want to get your stuff taken away, you know. So that is why maintaining consistency and consequences is of the utmost importance. And our third tip would be to encourage student participation. In order to encourage student participation, you need to be encouraging your students. Um, Encouraging students leads to higher engagement and motivation. Recognizing their efforts and celebrating achievements, no matter how small, can inspire them to take on challenges with confidence. And as we spoke about earlier, the higher self-efficacy the students have, the more confidence they have in themselves, the more they think they can succeed in tasks. And the more they think they can succeed, the higher value they will place on a task. Going back to our expectancy value theory, the higher the expectancy and the higher the value, the higher the motivation. So encouraging your students is super, super important, and that is how one of the ways that you keep your students motivated. Um, so the way that I would incorporate this in my future classroom, I would use a You've Got Mail Google form, which is basically just an anonymous, well, it can be anonymous or they can put their name to it, but it's just a way for them to have an open communication with the teacher outside of actually going and talking to the teacher. This may be more easily accessible for them, or maybe they're just too shy to go talk to the teacher. So this is a great way for teachers to kind of know what's going on with their students. Like, for example, if one student is feeling not super confident in the content they are learning, they could reach out to the teacher and be like, hey, I'm not really feeling super confident. And then that teacher knows, like, okay, this student needs they need more encouragement, they need more um, assistance, and they can help them that way. Um, Tip number 4 would be to make lessons engaging. And engaging lessons capture students' interest and make learning enjoyable. Incorporating hands-on activities, technology, and interactive discussions can enhance the learning experience. Um, the reason that I say to make lessons engaging goes again back to our expectancy value theory. The more genuinely interested a student is in a topic, the more value they will place on that task. So the more fun and engaging you can make your lessons, the more interested your students will be in that topic. Um, and the way that I would incorporate this into the classroom, feedback from feedback from your students is so important. It helps you know what they need help with, what is going well, what they enjoy about the lesson, what they don't enjoy, what they would maybe change, and it just helps you have a better idea of what they like. So you can always do a feedback post on Padlet. You can ask them to tell you about their favorite activity from a unit or their favorite topic, what they enjoyed about it, what they didn't. And you can do this with a Google form as well. Or they could make a PowerPoint presentation about their favorite activity and why. I would recommend doing your feedback after every unit so that their ideas are fresh in their mind, their experiences are fresh in their mind, and they can remember what they liked and what they didn't like, and so that you get immediate feedback. Okay, tip number 5, our most important tip. If you don't take anything from this video, take this. You have to prioritize your student relationships. You just have to. In both of my interviews with my mom, and keep in mind, both of these interviews were about different theories and different concepts. Both of these interviews came to the same conclusion of you can have all the strategies and techniques and theories that you want. Those are great, they help too. But the most important thing is knowing your students. So, um, some of the ways that you can get to know your students in the classroom are you could use a get to know me Padlet post, get to know me PowerPoint, get to know me website. Um, they can tell you about themselves. They can tell you how they learn best, what topics they enjoy learning about, things like that. You could also do a personality quiz via Google Forms. That one I don't recommend as much because I feel like it's just not as personal as them actually making something about themselves, but still a great resource. And again, just to emphasize, the most important thing, I believe, the most important thing you can do is build strong connections with your students. make those relationships, get to know them, understand how their minds work. It is of the utmost importance. I cannot stress that enough. Forging meaningful relationships with students is essential for fostering an engaging and supportive classroom atmosphere. By comprehending their unique motivations and challenges, educators can tailor their approaches to meet individual needs, ultimately enhancing the learning experience and ensuring academic success. Get to know your students. That's the most important thing. It really is. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation. I hope maybe you'll take some of those ideas from our tips with the technology, use them in your classroom, or maybe if you're struggling with some of your higher achieving students and keeping them motivated, you can understand and try to change their perception of success. Um, Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed my presentation and learned a little something from it. Have a great day.